basically only find them in the communities of color, whereby in other communities you are able to have public schools that are satisfactory to the parents and to and whereby the children are able to be successful. Yet in our communities, parts of our communities, they're only offering charter schools as an option, and even they have not really proven that unquestionably that they're providing a better opportunity. In fact, in some cases, we're seeing fudging going on with that as well. So that's sort of the scenario that we're confronting now. Obviously, there's been some negotiations in which some changes have been proposed, agreed upon, supposedly. But the fact of the matter is that ultimately, mayoral control, as it has been negotiated so far, has not changed, whether it's going to be in terms of what the Assembly has done already or whether it's going to be what is presently being considered by the Senate. There will be some pieces in it that might suggest some kind of changes, but effectively, mayoral control will be what is on the table.
Mm-hmm. We'd like to remind everyone you're listening to WBAI 99.5 FM in New York. This is Education at the Crossroads. We're currently talking with State Senator Bill Perkins. Now, one of the things that I can't understand, and maybe you can explain this to me, many of the senators who come from Nassau, Suffolk, Rockland, Westchester, I mean all the counties going all the way up north and going east, they all come from communities in which they have to vote for a school board. And they support this particular form of governance wherever they happen to live. Now, many of these same people are in the form of mayoral control, taking the vote, the right to vote, away from the parents in New York City and attempting to try to give New York City another form of governance. How can they see this as being consistent? If it's good for them, shouldn't it be good for New York City?
Whether it's good for them or not, it should be good for New York City, as far as I'm concerned. This is what we have done is, in a way, turn back the clock of history, in the sense that, when there was a movement that created community participation in a significant way in the schooling process, not necessarily in terms of the educational process, in terms of teaching and whatnot, but providing community control, so to speak, in that process, such that parents and community would be invited into the process, as opposed to what we see now, in which they're being forced out of the process, and in which you have a sort of dictatorial control by the mayor, in which that control is creating a lot of antagonism between the community and the mayor. In fact, I think that the mayor's disdain for parental involvement is sort of a third rail that will have bearing on his campaign. And in fact, I believe that those polls that have just come out, to some extent, may be the outrage being measured by those parents across the board who are upset by the mayoral control, including the manner in which he ended term limits and allowed himself to continue to run again. So I think there's some very now, in terms of those who don't support the kind of vision that community control had in mind, but nevertheless supported in their communities. Well, in many cases, you have to understand that these are Republican-dominated areas, and they, as Republican senators, are very much allied with Bloomberg, who has been one of their primary financiers for their campaign.
Senator Perkins, how you doing?
Fine. Who's this?
This is Saul McCancer, radical educator. How you doing?
Fine, brother. How are you?
All right. In this economic downturn, you hear Bloomberg when he talks about the Board of Miseducation, as I call it. They've cut the red tape. That red tape equals jobs. And I noticed some of the Black and Latino caucus have been supporting mayoral control. Has there been any discussion, especially with these no-bid contracts that these workers have been contracted out outside the city, the downturn of employment or the unemployment of the Black and Latino, especially males in our communities, especially like your community, which has been hit hard, and these no-bid contracts, how that directly affects them? Has it been helped to you to lobby some of your people to come to their senses, so to say?
Well, let me say this to his credit. I must say Senator Sampson, our conference leader, has voiced his concern about the procurement processes that, again, do not have the kind of transparency and accountability of that which you are talking about. Instead, you have the potential for a great deal of favoritism. Believe me, it's understood, I think, why that mayoral control is a slippery slope backwards in terms of democracy. And these no-bid contracts are a good example of that. And in the past, we have seen these no-good contracts have fallen flat on their face. Remember the Snapple case, when the mayor first got elected and had mayoral control. He took all the vending machines out of the public school system and other public offices and replaced them with Snapple machines. This was done without a contract and without any bidding, with no bid contracts, and without a legitimate procurement process, and presumably to make money for the city. It turned out it didn't make any money, and by the way, it was done in the context of a report that had come out at the same time about obesity amongst the children in the public schools, especially the children of color. And so here you are putting Snapple machines in every place in the public school system and in the public buildings, but especially in the public school system. I remember Dr. Adelaide Stanford spoke out very strongly at that time when we had our hearings in the city council about that contract. To his credit, I must say Bill Thompson at that time was very strong in opposing those contracts and challenging the mayor on that note. And here we are, many years later, he's challenging the mayor with respect to some of the credibility of the success that the mayor has been touting as a reason for continuing mayoral control and obviously for continuing his leadership as the mayor of the city. There's no question that these types of contracts, especially as we've been reading about them recently, in terms of consultants getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, could better service many others, and especially in our communities, if favoritism and that kind of secretive way of giving out these contracts was not only exposed but changed. Unfortunately, under mayoral control, that cannot happen, and so that's another area of great concern. When you govern, you're really governing with the blessing and the privilege of taking care of the people's money, taking care of the people's agenda. When you have mayoral control in the dictatorial way that we're seeing it, you don't have to be accountable to people. You don't have to be accountable except to that clique to whom you are in touch, and therefore you can do things that are not in the best interest of the community at large, particularly in terms of the kind of unemployment issues that you're raising, and see how some of those resources can be addressed and used, fulfilling the governmental purpose, but at the same time having the second important objective of dealing with the stubborn instances of unemployment and training and other kinds of opportunities.